So, Nicholas, you must be excited that the Greens actually declared today that the price of their vote, should the Labor Party not get an absolute majority, was 75%.
Look, there was a couple of problems with what Adam Bandt was saying there today, and a couple of problems with what you said in your editorial, but I'll get to that in a moment. In terms of Adam Bandt, he's got this whole political strategy about turfing out the government and then holding the balance of power and governing with Labor. That's at least what his proclaimed strategy is. But when you actually look at the seats that the Greens are claiming they're going to target and that they want to win at the next election, most of them are Labor seats. Cooper, Macnamara, Wills in Melbourne, Richmond in New South Wales, Canberra in the ACT. These seats are all held by Labor. So as you rightly said, Labor needs to win 8 seats at the election to win. It's a big ask. It is possible. But they don't get to the 8 seats they need to win government with the Greens taking seats from them. So as an electoral strategy, what Adam Bandt is saying is not particularly helpful. Like, he should be out there trying to fight Tories, taking on Tories, if that's what he wants to try and bring down, not trying to win Labor seats and making them green. That doesn't help the progressive cause of this country.
But what about it, Chris? Hang on, you've had a good crack. You decided to put the first half in, so I want to give everyone a crack here. Chris, it was a sonic boom today. Honestly, anyone actually paying attention, they were saying what the consequences are. Now, look, 75% might be their ambit claim, but even if they levelled at 50, it's double where we are now.
Oh, look, absolutely. I think, look, I've got to say, I'm finding it even more difficult than usual to take Nicholas seriously with this porn star look. But anyway, I'll soldier on.
It is November. All for men's health.
The point is that the Greens have enormous power no matter what. I think the chances of a hung parliament and Anthony Albanese having to deal with Greens in the lower house and Greens in name like Zali Steggall as well is very high. But regardless, if by some fate Labor managed to get a majority in the lower house, they won't get anything through Parliament without the Greens in the Senate. Correct. So whatever way it goes, if Labor form government, they'll be wagging, the green tail will be wagging what they do. And as you say, it's got to be something like 50%. Labor's own rhetoric in the lead up to Glasgow says they've got to be 50%. They took 45% to the last election. So either they're serious about what they say about saving the planet and drastic climate action, and they go for 45 from last year or up it to 50 this time to meet the Glasgow aspirations. And the Greens will push them there anyway. And that's going to be wreaking sort of economic Armageddon between now and 2030. Or they'll say something like 35%, which is where we're headed to anyway, and they're just exposed as being complete opportunists and not carrying through on their convictions.
Well, if they're politically smart, they say 35 because that's the upper end of the predictions of the government, which essentially means none of what we've been talking about effectively comes into play. But Mark, Albo is desperately trying to get into this scenario where if I don't give a number, then I'm not going to get people to sort of put the bed, and also I'm not going to annoy the Greens in all of this. Now, Tony Abbott was not allowed to not have a policy on the NBN going into the 2013. He wasn't allowed to not have a position on climate change, hence why we got things like direct action. Good on Lee Sales for actually asking the question, but the game Albo is trying to play here is to put out a number the day before Christmas and hope nobody notices.
Well, I suppose so. We'll see which day in December he puts it out. But, I'm surprised at the Greens' lack of ambition. It's only 75%. If you actually read Greens' policies, the target is not the problem. Greens' policy is to close every coal mine, every gas facility, every petrol-driven car, get them off the road, and do all of that yesterday. And there'd be nothing left of the economy. So don't worry about 75%. It'd be 100%, and unemployment going through the roof, particularly in regional Australia. So the Greens' policy is barbaric, it's cruel to working class areas like the Hunter Valley and central Queensland, where they rely heavily on these jobs. They talk about transition to green energy. There is no transition. It's a brutal, immediate closure, and not just of domestic use of fossil fuels, but export as well. They would close all that stuff you see on the screen there at the port of Newcastle and elsewhere. That'd all be gone. They'll bulldoze that into the ocean. And all of these jobs and all of these industries are gone yesterday under the Greens policy. So if they think they're going to be in alliance with Labor, the Labor government would be a repeat of the Great Depression.
Yeah, well, here again is Adam Bandt outside the Parliament, repeating what he was saying, really exposing us to all sort of the kinematics of it all.
We're heading towards an election where Thankfully, this government's going to be kicked out, the Greens will get put in balance of power, and in the next parliament we can take action on corruption and take action on climate.
Nick, can I play that every night between now and the election?
What I will be interested to see how much you can spin and make a scare campaign of is if Labor comes in, say, at the same level as Canada, 40 to 45%. It's pretty hard to run a scare campaign on that, even for you, Paul. I mean, as you said, the modelling...
15 points above where we currently are.
Has Australia heading for... Well, no, the government's modelling has us heading for 35%. Canada's at 40 to 45. So if Albo comes in at 40%, like it's not 5% better than we're on target to achieve. Now it's very sellable, of course, because it's a long way ahead of the pathetic target that Morrison is putting up.
Hang on, you're saying it's the same target. Hang on, it's the pathetic same target.
It's safe enough. It's safe enough because you look at Canada. I mean,
but Nicholas,
and you look at Canada and say, well, Canada's a progressive country. Justin Trudeau's done pretty well there, and it's just got putting in place the same targets as Canada.
Canada has a lot of hydro and some nuclear as well. But just quickly, Nicholas, the key point here, I'm interested in your take on this.
Also has a lot of fossil fuels.
Is Paul's point, though, Nicholas, and that sure, Labor will come down with the number that they think is most politically saleable. They'll have a 35%, for instance. But as to Paul's point, and actually Adam Band's point, is it doesn't matter what Labor says. The real number is what the Greens will let them have.
Correct.
Well, I'll tell you what the real story here is. It's Scott Morrison. Like, you remember the last election when he went around saying that Labor's electric vehicle policy was going to kill the weekend? And then 2 weeks ago, he basically announced Labor's policy. Like, what a crock. Surely you're not going to let him get away with that again, Chris Kenny or Paul Murray?
You know how many weekends I've had holidaying on long road trips around this country in the last 2 years? They did kill the weekend.